Hey, thanks guys. Hey, what an introduction. Okay, we are now relaunching Moviezoo, and it's going to be packed with so many characters with differing outlooks on life. We will inject some humor, but most importantly discuss many issues of the day. Hey Sad Bob, give us a smile. Ah well, I did try, maybe one day. Opposite me is Wise William, this guy is a legend. We have Tracy at the bar. Oops, Tracy, are you okay? Behind me we have Philip Stinton, he is our prepper. He has been warning us for a long time now about the problems we are going to face in the future. We also have Steve, who has been my sparring partner for many years now. He is the eternal optimist. He must have bought himself a pair of rose-tinted glasses. Indeed, I would go as far to say, he has the strongest prescription. Okay, first of all I would like to ask Wise William what his views are on the state of Western economies.
Okay. You better sit down for this. Our troubles really started in 1971 when Richard Nixon detached the dollar from the gold standard to pay for the Vietnam War. It was only supposed to be a temporary measure, but the dollar never returned to the gold standard. The gold standard ensured a sensible fractional reserve ratio of 1:9. Over time the fractional reserve ratio changed, it soon became 1:20, and today there is very little money held in reserve to loan currency into existence. At the moment people do not seem too worried with the amount of debt Western countries have, because not many people understand fractional reserve banking. When Donald Trump became president, the US debt was $19 trillion. Today it stands at $28 trillion with $3.4 trillion in the pipeline. The root cause of our problems are government debt and personal debt. Most Western governments have given up on the idea of balancing the budget. In a nutshell, they have deferred reality. It's a bit like us spending on our credit cards and then borrowing from Wonga. Politicians have promised the earth to a fickle public. Hey Steve, how long will it take to count to 1 trillion counting a different number every second?
I am not sure. Let me see. Okay, let's go for 8 years.
It is actually 32,000 years. Now that I have established the financial position to date, I am going to give you my view on the future. I am sorry to say it's rather grim. Governments know that our current lifestyle is unsustainable, and that a change in direction is necessary. I personally think COVID-19 was an opportunity to push through the Great Reset, the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, Agenda 2030. Victoria, a state in Australia, has had the most lockdowns in the world, and the most draconian measures to deal with the virus. There have been many protests and the police have been firing rubber bullets, used tear gas and have pepper sprayed the protesters. In my opinion, there has been an overreach by the authorities, for a virus that appears to be no deadlier than the flu. It seems to me that it is a power grab by the authorities to take our freedoms away in the name of security. Have a look at the following videos, Steve, and let me know your thoughts.
Warning. Censorship. Warning.
Thousands of protests here behind me, and you can see now the riot police have formed to confront the protesters, and hundreds of police, not socially distanced on that side either, but they have got once again their rubber bullets and pepper spray. We've seen today, unlike any protest before in Melbourne, they've started to use this tool, the rubber bullets, against their own citizens.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
So they're firing tear gas now on the crowd, at our legs. This is the state of freedom in Melbourne, Australia. We're reporting on a protest. The only danger you face is from police. As you can see behind me, thousands of protesters now have descended on Melbourne's CBD. Moments ago, the police indiscriminately spraying the crowd with pepper spray. Riot squad coming out and chasing, hunting, arresting protesters they can catch. But it hasn't stopped the group from marching on for their freedom. Remember, this is the 6th lockdown this city has seen. It was supposed to be a 7-day snap lockdown. 3 weeks into it with no end in sight, these people say they are not going to stop. And if this is anything to go by, I take their word for it. Avi Mini for Rebel News in Melbourne, Australia.
We've been around for 23 years, never segregated anyone, never discriminated against anyone, and we didn't want to start doing it now.
Breaching of a public health order can now be a 2-year prison term.
It's interesting having the Parliament guys out. It's good having them out.
They're giving themselves ongoing lockdown powers, and this is going to, instead of ending in December, this is going to roll right through 2022.
This is what every parliament is lacking. Avi Mini here in Melbourne, Australia, for an unprecedented story. This is what, I don't know, we can only describe it as a shadow parliament. In fact, probably a rebel parliament. We have 3 members of the upper house that have been banished because they refuse to show their vaccine passports. They refuse to show their private medical history. Let's check out what's going on here. Here we go. We got Member of Parliament, Catherine Cumming, opening the door. How you doing?
Want to come in?
Is this the Parliament?
This is Parliament in the basement of a rebel Parliament.
Rebel Parliament, we'll go with that one. I like that. It suits the... So this is literally a nightclub, Chase Lounge.
Yeah, and unlike, I think this is probably the first time since the war that members are actually meeting in a basement.
A few weeks ago, the government forced through a motion in Parliament to get all members of Parliament to hand over their papers or be suspended. They followed through with that. They suspended 4 members of Parliament from the upper house and 1 from the lower house. And so we're in a situation where we need somewhere to work. We can take part in Parliament remotely, and that's what we've set up here.
The last time it happened in Westminster Parliament was 1648, when Cromwell, the dictator, purged the Parliament of anyone who wouldn't support the execution of the King. So it's and what was left is called the Rump Parliament, and what we have in Victoria now is a Rump Parliament.
So what I got from that, there is precedence.
Long time ago, and I'm not really sure you want to line up with Cromwell.
I don't know about Dan.
I don't know if you know that I'm German. My mother came after the Second World War. Her father was actually taken away in the Second World War for actually protecting the Jewish community, my grandfather.
Thank you.
Yeah, so and so obviously during this pandemic, a lot of people have actually been making references to Nazi Germany and those kind of things, which has really broken my heart. And watching what's been happening for even the Jewish community trying to actually be able to gather has really broken my heart. We don't need it here. We don't need to mandate. Australians, if you actually tell us, give us common sense medical advice, we just take that on board.
We thought it was very unreasonable what the government is doing, that they should be able to have rapid antigen testing as an alternative, right? And they rejected that, but we've actually done it here ourselves.
We are in fact COVID-free.
We are in fact COVID-free, yes. And
thank goodness. At the same time, while you're doing this, there's probably one of the most important or contentious pieces of legislation going through the Parliament. Can you tell us about the bill?
Look, some of the things that this does is it transfers control of emergency declarations to the Premier himself. He can do it in 3-month blocks for however long he wants. But it also does things like sets up new offences.
We had obviously the state of emergency for 6 months, and then it was extended for 6 months, and then it was extended for 9 months, which was March to December this year. And we thought, well, the extensions would mean that we're actually going through the pandemic and that would be it. But to think that this government's decided to actually write a piece of legislation so that they can continue on the controls and the mandates is quite shocking.
When the state of emergency was declared and I went through what it meant, I messaged some, friends in the mainstream media that, you'd be surprised I have friends and they're in the mainstream media, but there are actually some good people in there. And I messaged him and I said, am I reading this right? Like, cops can essentially come into my house and without a warrant. And he goes, but the qualifier is that there's a max 6 months, it was predetermined in peacetime to protect the population from a potentially rogue government, that this power is only very limited. There was outrage every time that got extended. I don't know what it is going to be in December. That 6 months is
21 months.
21 months. But what it seems to me as an outsider looking at what's being proposed here, it's not an extension of that, it's worse.
It's worse. It's permanent. So they can bring up these 3-month extensions whenever they like. Basically, it's up to the Premier. So I mean, it's pretty scary stuff what they're coming up with, especially when we've seen how the powers have been used in the past. Now they're saying, oh, we've got extra transparency now. We're going to start releasing the public health advice and the human rights assessments. There's nothing stopping them doing that now, and that's what I've been asking for the last year. Tim and I have both been going on, like especially the human rights issues. I know that you've witnessed a lot of it at the protests and stuff, the way they just go straight over the top on a lot of these things. Absolutely horrific. And the idea of these powers being used responsibly, we just don't buy it.
We're getting COVID under control, and we've learnt a lot more about how to treat people. We've got the vaccines have rolled out. There is no need for this legislation at this time.
Is there any offence related to COVID that you would agree deserves a 2-year jail term?
No.
I wouldn't think so. Maybe someone deliberately infecting old people who were unvaccinated. But no.
We can actually move on and actually just like how we used to be, which we would just say, how you going? You all right? And if you were sick, you just go home. We can live with COVID, and we don't need to be frightened of each other anymore. But this bill will continue on the mandates and the controls, and we don't need that.
Those laws are going to be there forever, and they're going to be used by every future government, and we just can't let that power just be in the hands of, who knows in the future, right?
What do you mean in the future? I feel like there's a tyrant there now.
I'm talking about next week, but
But you make a good point, because I'm embarrassed, because I'm somebody that was very, very vocal about my support on certain counter-terrorism legislation, which today we see being abused against these so-called anti-maskers or these anti-lockdown groups. And I look at it and go, even if the intention at the time was good and legitimate, it absolutely will be abused. I feel that this intention is not even clean. Why should we trust the government now when they've abused everything up until now?
They've shown they can't be trusted. The whole last 21 months has been all about how you cannot trust this government.
A message to the rest of the world from the Parliament, from the MPs in exile. What would you say to them?
Watch what's going on in Australia. What's happening with kicking members of Parliament out for not handing over their papers, setting up a segregated society, and these sort of things. If it hasn't happened to your society, watch what's happening here, and see us as a warning. And I hope it doesn't happen wherever you come from.
Don't ever trust your governments. Governments can't be trusted.
This Victorian government has gone to the extreme in the way of mandates, making things up as they go along, not actually looking around the world at places in the world that have done best practice.
As you can see, we're closed. That's why we've offered it to these guys. So, we are on it.
And most importantly, so you're saying November 24, it's meant to be open without capacity limits?
Absolutely.
Get me on the VIP list.
Yeah, I could do that.
Parliament in exile is what we've been calling it, or some people have called it. What did you say?
Oh, the pirate parliament?
Yeah. Catherine called it Rebel Parliament. We wanted to brand it. We were selling T-shirts already.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask that question again. What is this Parliament?
It's been referred to as a rebel base.
Rebel base. Yeah.
Love it.
Well, there you go. This is Australia today, and it could become the rest of us tomorrow. To be absolutely frank, our current lifestyle is unsustainable, but we need our politicians to be more honest with us. It's because they have not been honest in the past, we have the problems we are facing today. Politicians like to be popular, that's why they promise the earth to a fickle public, therefore allowing public debt to get out of control. I would not be a popular politician because I would tell it as it is. If I were a politician, I would say that our standard of living will have to fall to enable us to balance the budget. I would also ensure the rich pay their fair share. I would also get rid of the woke nonsense. For example, the US have introduced a passport for gender X. The public believe the authorities have lost the plot. I believe the authorities are doing this on purpose to divide the population. The authorities know the woke culture is nonsense, but it fits their agenda. When people start to become crybabies and lack critical thinking, they are easier to control. In conclusion, we need a change of direction from our current lifestyle, but we do not want to enter a dystopian future, which I believe the Great Reset will do. We need to accept a lower standard of living but maintain our freedoms. Have a look at this video where the World Economic Forum promote the Great Reset.
Wow, very powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Wise William. I understand that. The video has been taken down by the World Economic Forum's website, and to be honest, I can see why they did that. What a dystopian picture it paints. Looks like we have a choice ahead of us, and that is accept the Great Reset with all its draconian measures, including being monitored all the time, or accept our standard of living will fall, but in a society where you are still free.